This is the Blaze Radio on demand.
Readers.com is your one-stop shop for quality reading glasses with over 700 styles under $20. Readers.com offers bifocal readers, reading sunglasses, computer readers, and more with powers from 1.0 to 6.0. With free shipping on orders over $30, friendly customer service, and easy returns, you are sure to find your perfect pair. Enter the coupon code BUCK at checkout for 30% off your next order. That's Readers.com. Happy eyes, happy wallet.
The Buck Sexton Show.
Now the Obama administration is winding down. Perhaps we'll get a little more insight into what they really believe and what they were really trying to accomplish. Maybe on things like the Iran deal, we'll start to know already who was right and who was wrong, who was telling the truth and who was lying. To that end, we're joined now by our friend Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He's of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Wants to talk to us about the latest on Obama's Iran deal. Dr. Jasser, great to have you.
Oh, it's always great to be with you, Buck. Thank you.
So there's a piece this week that's out that says, essentially, the Obama administration uses media outlets and bloggers and such as tools to sell their foreign policy, and everybody who's not part of Team Obama when it comes to foreign policy is part of, quote, the blob. Please give us some details on what we learned about how the Obama administration really both conducts its foreign policy and how it thinks about those who disagree with it.
Well, I think, we're finally seeing what many of us have been screaming from the rooftops for years, is that the Obama foreign policy is a mirage. It is sadly been put together by folks like Valerie Jarrett, who has a long history of Iranian sympathies, and we find that it's a work of fiction. And unfortunately, it's not fiction like the House of Cards. It's a reality that they've been painting this and working with lobbyists that are enemies. I mean, look at the coordination with the Huffington Post. The Huffington Post has featured editorials by folks related to the American Iranian Council, NIAC, and NIAC has had a number of pieces that parroted the Obama administration's policy. So their position, as Rhodes laid out, was to create an echo chamber. And all of a sudden, during this narrative, those who were against that echo chamber were vilified as warmongers and other aspects in order to push the Iran deal through, when in fact their side of the equation was simply coordinated while ours was a natural protestation. And what we were saying from the beginning, and this didn't come out at all in this week's reporting, is if you look at all of the terrorism against the West, 95% plus is Sunni related. The reason we've not had Shia terrorism is not because Iran loves us, but because they radicalize through economic openness, through trade, through building mosques and spreading their literature. Now they're going to be able to do that. So that's the part of the narrative that was missing. And I think now with the economic sanctions being lifted, their narrative is going to fall apart. Not to mention the Iran deal itself is already proving to have been a mirage and that they're ignoring it completely.
Update us on that, if you would, Dr. Jasser. What is happening right now with the Iran deal? What have since the signing, right? Since Obama's glorious moment of signing this deal, not a treaty, right? But a deal, whatever. Since that's happened, what have we learned about the deal, and what has been shown to be true?
Well, that's a great question. The bottom line is the deal was supposed to decrease the number of centrifuges, and the Obama administration will tell you that they decreased it between 5,000 and 6,000. But the issue is that they have normalized some of their nuclear research and using higher technology, more modernized centrifuges, thus making it almost less important for them to have the numbers necessary. They have supposedly been decreasing their uranium stockpiles, and yet there's been a need to verify that that's been happening. The Obama administration says that that's happening, but I don't believe so. The third part has to do with ballistic missiles. Now, the Obama administration will tell you that the ballistic missiles were not included as part of that, and Congress is already talking about putting new sanctions in because of their purchasing of missiles that was already, by the way, blocked in 2007, 2010, and 2012, and those would be missiles that could deliver nuclear weapons, and now they're going to be buying them from the Russians and elsewhere. And that's moving forward. So from both the conventional front and from the nuclear front, the trust but verify aspect, we have not, and senators have been asking for that, asking for verification that carries promises that we have verification that the deal has been met. They've been dragging their feet, telling us that it has been, but yet there's been very little verification to the American people.
What do you think the mullah's game plan here is? If you were to sort of try to sketch out for us, let's assume for a second, Dr. Jasser, that you're sitting in there, you're sitting in the room with the Guardian Council. You're talking to the real power in Iran. What do the next 5 years look like if they get their way?
Well, if they get their way, this is, it's not rocket science. Their belligerence.
Well, it is kind of rocket science, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Bad joke.
That's true. What they want to do is regional hegemony, which is exactly what they're doing in Syria. So they see us basically genuflecting and allowing the Assad regime to push in. Right now, most of the Free Syria liberals will tell you they're fighting not against Arabs, but against Iranians and Russians. So one is regional hegemonization of the Shia crescent into Lebanon and pushing out of depopulation of the Sunni population, which is exactly what Assad's doing, so that they can have a crescent-type control of region through Iraq, which they are also gaining. So one is regional control against the GCC, which is falling apart. The Sunni Arab monarchs are weakening. And as they see America push back, they will then get closer to Russia and other entities that will allow them to begin to build up their military. And the monies, by the way, and this goes back to the Rhodes story, the monies that President Obama put through videos to the Iranian people saying this money is going to help your economy, the mullahs are sitting back in their little mullahocracy and telling themselves, wow, these billions that we're getting are going to help our military. They're going to help bolster our strength against the people to push back against the Green Revolution. The people will never see that. And there's nowhere in history that the Obama administration can tell us that militant Islamists, when they run government, will let the monies go down to the people in a free market type fashion. That's just idiocy.
Now, if you were able to direct the next administration, and without pushing you on the politics of this, Dr. Jasser, it's going to be either a Trump one or a Hillary one. So let's assume that it's a Trump one for a moment here. And President Trump, which is, I think, the first time I've ever said that, but President Trump sits down with you and he says, all right, Dr. Jasser, what should be done with the Iranians now? Because this is the criticism you always get from the left, right? They'll say, people complain about the Iran deal. At least it's constructive conversation. It brings the Iranians to the table. You just want war, and you have no alternative. You have nothing to, what would you say should be done to actually turn around the mullah's plan that we were just discussing, or to stop it?
Well, I think it's easy. And this is why the 2009 Green Revolution didn't come out of thin air. Regimes, when they get isolated, end up giving the people breathing room to where they start to see, wow, there's some weakening happening. And that's what was happening in Iran leading up to 2009. So in 2017, going into 18, I'd say, the strategy should be to put the sanctions back up, to isolate the regime, separate them from their circle of regional influence, especially Putin, who so far candidate Trump has called that he thinks he's a genius, and other things which really frighten me, and that Putin and Iran are working together to empower Assad. All of that triangle of evil, if you will, of strength in the Middle East needs to be broken. And you do that by isolating the Iranians, getting them out of the Russian airspace. Same thing as Assad. You can't get rid of ISIS without getting rid of Assad. Once you separate those connections, if you will start to isolate them and weaken their economy in the long term.
All right. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Dr. Jasser, really appreciate your time today. Thank you for giving us a ring.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.